Let us put our palms together. We respectfully invite Jiahhu Shifu to start the class. 3 half bows to Jiahhu Shifu.
1 half bow to the Buddha.
Ami Tuofu.
Let us start with a 5-minute meditation. When we practice mindfulness of breathing, we are not using the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, but we are using the nose consciousness and not the tongue consciousness. We are using the body consciousness because it can sense the flowing of air. But we try not to use the sixth consciousness to think about breathing. Rather, simple, basic, direct awareness. The direct experience of being present and aware of the breathing, moment by moment. This is the practice. Okay, let us put our palms together and recite the sutra opening gatha. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. So the sutra opening verse or sutra opening gatha is a preparation of our mind, or we should say preparation of our consciousness, so that we come into the class, come into the talk, come into the session with a mind of great gratitude, appreciation for the Buddha and the great masters of the past for giving us and preserving the teaching. There's profound wisdom in those teachings. We should know that this is rare to encounter. And there are things that are rare and things that are quite common in our lives, even though the Buddha's teaching seems to be very easy to encounter now. You can search for anything on the internet. That doesn't mean it is any less precious. In fact, it is even more precious because we have so much information, so much knowledge floating around now. And we are willing to spend the time, a couple hours a week at least, to sit down and study this Dharma, this text. Is an important part of our life, important part of doing something for ourselves. Okay? All right, so we will continue with the first of the 5 classes of all dharmas, which are divided into 100 dharmas in this classification. So the first class are the most commanding, the supreme. They are the mind dharmas, or the 8 kinds of consciousness. And last time we talked about the first 7 and didn't have time to talk about the 8th. Okay, so let's get there. Class 1, we going to look at the 8th consciousness. Now, however, I made a mistake. So we made a mistake last time saying that the 4 subtle afflictions are always associated with manas, or the 7th consciousness. Now, this is correct. Okay. Now, this is the most important characteristics of the 7th. Okay. But I also said that it's associated with only these 4 unwholesome mental factors, and that would be wrong. In fact, the 7th is associated with a total of 18 mental factors. Now, these 4 are the most dominant characteristics of the 7th. All right. As to what 18, we won't talk about all of it. That's just too much detail. But we will look at 5 others. Okay. All right. So now let us look at the 8th, or alaya, or storehouse, warehouse consciousness. Storehouse, so being a storage of karma seeds, is only one of the functions. Okay, it has other functions. So the alaya consciousness is the 7th and 8th are the most prominent, important characteristics of the Yogacara school, of this Buddhist school. Okay, it's unique in this school. Although this teaching of the 8 types of consciousness has spread across other Buddhist schools in China. We have 8 Mahayana schools in China. And the Zen school, the Chan school talk about it. The Vinaya school talk about it. And later Tiantai. I'm not sure Tiantai talk about it so much. But it is an influential teaching. Okay. So the Alaya consciousness has the following characteristics. One is repository. It's a storage repository of karma seeds created by the first 7 consciousness. So during our day-to-day life, our 5 senses, we see, we hear, we smell, we taste, we touch, and our 6th consciousness does a lot of work, right? We like, we don't like, we do this, we do that, we decide to do this, we decide not to do that. So all of that creates different kinds of karma. And that event, when it is past, it is still stored in our consciousness. And that storage is what we call the 8th consciousness. So in fact, we never forget anything in principle. So the Buddha can remember way before he became a Buddha, all these eons of lifetimes of how he practiced, how he suffered, the events that he encountered, and so on. He remembers everything. Okay. We, on the other hand, do not remember anything beyond a week or so, right? That's not because they are gone from our consciousness. They are still there. And the important thing is that they are still influencing us, those past events. So in Western psychology, like Freudian psychology, there's a lot of emphasis on how your childhood events, experiences can influence you into the adulthood, right? So that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, what we're saying is that not only from your childhood, but even events beyond this, before this lifetime, can have certain effects, certain level of effects. Okay, you just look at kids born from the same family. Supposedly they have the same home environment, same parents, right? Even twins, they can have different personalities. All right, those personalities are not necessarily all from their genes, but possibly from their past events. Okay, so these are the karma seeds. Now the second characteristic is a field. The field is used in the sense like a rice field or wheat field, where you plant the seed and you grow, and the seeds grow, right? So in the same way, the karma seeds will sprout, will transform. We say the transformation of these seeds, the transformation of karma is driven take place in the field that is the 8th consciousness. So things that are deep in your consciousness, events that happened before, okay, even long time ago, can begin to have some influence on your present day life if certain right conditions can trigger the sprouting of these karma seeds. And that's why sometimes some event can trigger you to have an emotional response, even response because of events that you have forgotten yourself. Okay. So when the conditions are favorable, the seeds will grow and bear fruits. The fruits here meaning the karma consequences. Okay. Or we say karmic retributions. These retributions, these consequences, these karma fruits can be good for you, can be bad for you, can make you happy, or can make you suffer. So when we in the West we talk about karma, what goes around comes around. Comes around is the fruit, right? And why does it go around? It's because he's always transforming. When you get into this process of transformation or growth, then it will continue to transform, continue to grow, and eventually bear a consequence, bear fruit, as long as the conditions that help it grow is sustained. Just like plants, just like trees, plants, wheat, rice. Okay. So object of detachment, it is also the eighth consciousness. Even though we, as individual human beings, we, in our ordinary state, we don't even know the existence. We don't detect the existence of eighth consciousness. But there's something deep inside that clings to the eighth consciousness. And that's the manas, the seventh, cling to the alaya as the self. So we talked about it last time. However, we did not tell you the complete story because we need to understand the eighth, to tell you the complete story of the seventh. And so this is the story. There are two parts to the alaya consciousness. There's the perceptive component and the form component. The perceptive component and the form component, kind of like our body. We have the part that sees, and we have the body that can be seen. Yeah. So in fact, all the eight consciousness have that perceptive component and the form component. Okay, we haven't talked about that because it's a little bit detailed, but in the eighth consciousness, it's important to understand that, to understand the deepest attachment to the self. So the perceptive component and the form component, the perceptive component is what sees or senses. And the form component is kind of like the body, okay? What is the body? What is the body of the eighth consciousness? Well, it's all these karma seeds. So do not think of the eighth consciousness as a big building, and inside are the karma seeds. Okay, there's no such building. The karma seeds are the body or the form of the eighth consciousness itself. Okay, so like in the old times in the villages, you harvest a lot of rice grains, right? You just pile it, you just put it in a pile, right? And that's the warehouse, that's the storage, kind of like that. The perceptive component sees the world, but it is with delusion, right? We don't see the world correctly. Now, we don't do that. And that's because the fundamental ignorance that is inherent in the eighth consciousness. So the perceptive component, in a way, sees the world, not with eyes, right? That's too crude. We're talking about in a very, very low level, it perceives the world, and including the karma seeds. And the form component is what is seen. Okay. Now this is a little bit abstract now, so bear with me. Now the manas, the seventh consciousness, thinks of the perceptive component of the laya as the self. So when we think about ourselves, we always think of ourselves as somebody who knows, right? Somebody who knows, somebody who's aware, somebody who can perceive. We will not cling to a dead rock and think that's me, right? Because the rock doesn't see anything, is not aware of anything. So our attachment, our idea of ourselves is gonna be something that knows, that's aware, that can think. Yeah. So that's something that can perceive. So the manas thinks of the perceptive component of the alayas as a self, and the form component as the world, including the external world and its own body, inner form. This is the origin of our delusion. So right now, we look at this world. What do we see? We see the blue planet, right? We see Earth. And then we know that Earth is part of the solar system. So we see these planets and stars. And we know that galaxies, the Milky Way, and so on and so on. That's what we have learned. And we can see with telescopes, radio telescopes, right? Well, that's true. And it's easy to think of that vision, that what we perceive, the world that we perceive, the external world, as the reality. Because it seems like everybody sees the same thing, right? Scientists, engineers who invented these telescopes and this measuring, the sensing equipment, they show us pictures and that's what we see. We seem to agree with each other. But actually that's because of mutual karma. We have similar karma. We have similar eighth consciousness, even though our karma seeds are quite different. Our experiences, individual experiences are different. Okay, but there's something very fundamental, something very low level that our experiences are quite the same and quite similar. But if you think about it, a dog, an owl in the forest, right? A deer, a bird, an ant, a rat, their perception of the world will be quite different, from us, right? So whose reality is the real reality? Well, none of us have the reality yet, right? None of us ordinary sentient beings. So when we are born as human beings, we see this world through human sense organs, right? Human eyes, human ears, human senses. When you're born as an animal, you're born with the animal senses, right? So certain animals like dogs, they have a much stronger smelling sense, right? A cat have much quicker vision than we do. So their sense functionalities are different. So maybe similar in some way, but quite different in other ways. And so the world that they perceive will be different. And it will be the reality for them. And that's because when we are born into a human form, our eighth consciousness, certain karma seeds of a human being are developed and bear fruit when we become a human. So this is what the seventh consciousness sees, taking the eighth as the perceptive component. All right. Now, our sixth consciousness comes in and paint on top of that. The sixth consciousness is like a painter, it paints on top of that. Yeah. For example, if you are a person who likes to go hiking, who likes nature, then when you come to the Prajna Forest Monastery, where I am now, you're gonna be very happy. Beautiful trees, great air. Love the greens, the trails, and so on. But if you're someone who likes to play computer games, on your phone, on your computer all the time, and you're not interested in going out and involving in nature, then you come here, you'll be really bored. It's not something beautiful, attractive to you, right? And if you're an artist, and if you're a scientist, if you're an engineer, and if you're a doctor, then your perception through your sixth consciousness, through the conditioning of the sixth consciousness, will paint, give a different shade to the fundamental reality according to the eighth and the seventh consciousness. Okay? So you know that the mosquito, for example, the fly and the mosquito, they have very complex eyes. Not two eyes, they have hundreds of eyes. What kind of world do they perceive? We cannot even imagine, right? But that's their reality because their eighth consciousness, when they are born as a mosquito, as a fly, these karma seeds for fly is ripens so that the world that they perceive, the external world they perceive, is according to what the fly sees. All right. So now we perceive this world and we perceive each other as such, but we think that's the truth. We think this is the reality. And we think this is who we are. This is the origin of our delusion. Another characteristic of the alaya is the first to come, last to go consciousness of a lifespan. So what that means is that when your parents conceived you, yeah, in the womb, when conception happens in the womb, uh, your eighth consciousness is attracted to the womb, to the physical event because of karma. The karma you have with your parents, the strong link you have with your father and your mother. Right? And so your eighth consciousness is pushed, forced. The eighth consciousness doesn't have a will of its own. It doesn't say, I want to go here, I want to go there. So it's pushed by karma. The karma link is like a magnet that draws it over to your parents. Right? So at the moment of conception, the consciousness, the eighth consciousness is there in the, with the fetus, tied to the fetus. So that's what the eighth consciousness does too. The eighth consciousness makes the connection with the karma seeds. Your karma seeds from endless time from before with this fetus at this point is tied together. Right? And as the womb develops, other types of consciousness awakens, or the karma seed for other consciousness, the first six, for that body, for that lifetime, will ripen and develop along with the physical fetus, right? The fetus grows, and then the sense parts, the sense organs are born, are developed, right? And then uh, the first five senses are awakened uh, at the appropriate time. What comes with the eighth consciousness going into the womb is the seventh consciousness as well. The seventh consciousness is not interrupted through lifetimes. So the seventh and the eighth are not interrupted through lifetimes. They are always there, in this flow. When you are born, from your mother's womb, you grow up your sixth consciousness and along with the first five consciousness start creating all this karma and react to all this past karma. And then you continue until one day you die. When you die, the first six consciousness will go away. Will go away eventually. At some point. At some point. But the seventh and the eighth doesn't go away. It just continue. It just continues to do its thing. Its low-level thing. Okay, it's cleaning and perception. It's low-level thing. It's like you have a computer. Let's say you have a PC, and then you have the Windows operating system. You say, okay, I don't want Windows operating system. I'm gonna take it out and put in Opera operating system or different operating system, right? So you switch out. That's kind of like the lower level underpinning functioning are still there, but then how you interact with it, how the user interacts with the computer is different because the operating system is different now. The operating system is kind of like is the interface, right? The human computer interface. Um, is like the first six consciousness. All right, so when you die, the first six dissipates, goes away. Uh, but then your karma doesn't end. The karma seeds continue to get ripened, or earlier we talked about the projecting karma and the completing karma. Remember that continues to flow, continues to develop, with the conditions of what you did in this life, and then continues until at the appropriate time your eighth consciousness gets drawn into your parents of the next rebirth. So that's why the alaya is the first to come and last to go. Okay, it actually doesn't go anywhere. It's not like you die in California and you get reborn in China. So then your eighth consciousness flies over to China. No, it's not like that. Because in the eighth consciousness, California or Beijing is it's not real. It's just manifestation of the karma seeds. So it doesn't actually, we don't actually go anywhere. It's just our perception changes. So when you get reborn, the setting details come from the projecting karma and the completing karma of the past actions, primarily from the sixth consciousness. So your sixth consciousness is the main thing, the main guy, the main leader, that that determines what will happen in your future. So we should not imagine that the alaya is an entity that actually moves from one place to another. Rather, its manifestation or incarnation lasts through a lifespan. That's what I just explained. So the seventh, manas, always take the alaya as a self through any incarnation because the alaya continues to unfold, right? Continue to transform its own karma seeds. It just keep going and going and going. So that's why from one lifetime to another, it doesn't really affect the seventh consciousness. It's the perceptive component of the eighth is always there. When I say always there, don't think of it as a permanent thing. It's a birth and death, momentary birth and death thing. Okay, but the perceptive component is always there every moment. So you just keep on clinging to it, and it's because of that the seventh thinks there's a permanent self. There's a permanent perceptive self. There's a permanent perception that's always there. It's the most innate sense of self. Okay, so that is the relationship. Well, it's the core relationship between the seventh and the eighth. Okay, so the eight kinds of consciousness, they have individual functions, but do not think of them as eight distinct entities. So don't think that there's eight kinds of me in there, right? It's not. It's more like there's a very complex thing called the mind, and the mind can do so many different things. How do I even how do I even begin to understand the mind? Well, let us separate the functions of the mind into these eight categories, these eight types, and we'll give it a name. We'll give it a name. All right, for each. And that's how we can systematically understand how the mind works. Okay? So it's kind of like the parts of the tree, the root, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the flowers. All of these parts are actually organic whole. You can't really seriously separate them, but we are able to talk about the different functions of the root and the trunk and the branches and the leaves, right? That help us, to understand how the tree works in a systematic way. That's what the eight consciousness are. And they're not separate things. They are, you know, they are how we can understand our mind. Now, in the very first class, I talked about the three natures, which is a very important teaching in the Yogacara school. And I haven't mentioned it. I didn't talk about it much. So let's use these eight consciousness to see how they relate to the three natures. The three natures are imagined nature, dependent nature, and perfect nature. Okay? So imagined nature is the subtle innate self is imagined by the seventh, and the ego self is imagined by the sixth. So of the eight types of consciousness, uh, the active parts, the one that can lead our karma are the six primarily, and the seventh on a lower level. Okay, so the six perceive a self, an innate self. That is imagined nature. That is not real. That is imagined by the seventh consciousness. Now, the sixth consciousness, on the other hand, fill in the details because the self, the innate, the low-level innate self, doesn't have any prominent characteristics. It's just a always existing, always knowing, perceiving I. But that's really boring, right? So the sixth consciousness fill up the details. Okay, I'm good looking, I'm not good looking, I'm smart, I'm stupid, I'm fat, I'm skinny, I'm, whatever. All these different personalities are uh, are perceived by the sixth. So we may call it the ego self, right? By the sixth consciousness. But that's also imagined nature, because anything you can say about yourself, any part of your personality can be changed. It is not innate. It is not unchangeable. It is changeable, right? So you can change any part of yourself if you really want to and if you work hard. Yeah, somebody who thinks that um, they are really incompetent in math can actually become good at it. If the good teacher, if a really excellent teacher can discover where the blockage is, where the hindrance is in that person's mind and help overcome. Okay. Dependent nature. How the karma seeds in the eighth are transformed by activities of the first six, like seeds sprouting and bearing fruits. So we talked about the karma seeds. Events from the past will bear fruit. What goes around comes around. What that process itself is dependent origination or dependent arising or interdependence. There's a law, there's a rule. Yeah, the apple tree is not going to grow into an orange tree. So an apple seed is going to grow into an apple tree with the right suitable conditions. The right suitable condition is what we call the causal law, the causal principles. It's going to be slightly different for orange trees. It's going to be very different for like rosemary or basil, right? So what are the appropriate conditions for a person, for a human being to live in a healthy way would be quite different for a dog. The things that we can eat but very poisonous to a dog, right? The things that dogs eat but we won't touch, right? So what is healthy for a dog is quite different. What sustains the life of a healthy dog is quite different. So these conditions are different. That's the causal law. So how the karma seeds in the eighth are triggered into activation, are activated, and then how they transform and grow and so on, leading to some event happening to you in your life. Yeah, for in this life, things that happen to you without you asking for it. All right? Some things you get as a result of your effort in this life. For example, you decide you want to go to college and get an engineering degree or get an art degree, right? So after 4 years or so of work, then you got your degree. That degree is a fruit, a karmic fruit of your action in this life, your determination in this life, right? But then there are things that happen to us in this life that we don't know why it happens to us, right? And that's most likely because of karma in the way past or on a much lower level that we don't detect. Yeah, it could well be from our past lives, things that happen to us, right? For example, the family we're born into, the family condition that we're born into, the region, what region on earth are we born into is definitely a result of your past karma seeds. Not in this life because your life haven't started yet. So that's the dependent nature. How the eighth work is dependent nature. The eighth doesn't have the idea of I want to do this, I want to do that. You are good, I like you. That's the sixth consciousness. The eighth consciousness is mostly pushed, driven by the causal law. The first five senses also primarily functions dependently. So dependent nature. Okay. So now you see the importance of imagined nature. The sixth and the seventh are the primary culprit for the imagined nature or our delusion. And that delusion, the wrong perception lead to our afflictions, our worries, our troubles, our suffering, our pain. So when we work, when we do our spiritual practice, when we cultivate, we need to start from the sixth consciousness and work into the seventh consciousness. We don't really start with this. We can't really touch the eighth consciousness directly. And we can't really, it's not very effective to work with the five senses. For example, if you think, okay, the world is too much stimulation and too hard, too overwhelming, I'm gonna go to the monastery. I'm gonna stay in the monastery and then I will be able to live happily. Well, that's not true. Because you think by escaping what the five senses perceive, you will be able to find peace of mind. That's not true. The culprit is your sixth consciousness. You need to change your perception. Your sixth consciousness need to understand better the causal laws, the interdependence, the dependent nature of how things work. And then to turn things around, you change your perception to fit more with reality, which is through observing the dependent nature, the interdependence, the dependent arising. And by doing that, working with a more clear perception or understanding of dependent nature, we can destroy the imagined nature eventually. And that leads to the perception of perfect nature or the ultimate reality. So the perfect nature is not in any of the eight consciousness. It's not available yet, while the eight consciousness are still working, right? Although the first five perceptions are less diluted than six. So the perfect nature is revealed by using the dependent nature to remove the imagined nature. So remember the five classes, the unconditioned class, the unconditioned Dharma at the end is revealed by the first four, right? Revealed by the first four. So the first four, we talk about the consciousness, the 54 mental factors, the physical world, and the concepts, right? The 24 mind dissociated dharmas. The reason we want to study this is to understand how they work dependently together with each other. And when we do, we will be able to destroy the deluded imagined nature that fill up the sixth and the seventh. Okay. So most of us do not directly realize the karma effects or karmic effects of one's actions are in constant development. Constantly, but most of the time we don't feel it. And when we are blind to this, that's why some people can commit crimes. They think that, okay, by robbing somebody, cheating somebody, hurting somebody, I can get what I want. And they are ignoring the karmic fruits. And right now, some bad people are not suffering their karmic retribution, not because causality doesn't work, but because it takes time. It takes the right conditions for the fruit to come to fruition, for the fruit to ripen. Okay, but it's steadily, slow or fast developing. All right, so there are two poems on the consciousness, on these eight consciousness in Chinese Buddhism. So I've translated as such. 8 brothers from one same womb. One is quick, one is slow. 5 goes out to buy and sell. 1 stays home and keeps the books well. Can you guess which is which? All right, so 5, that's easy, right? That's a hint. 5 goes out to buy and sell. That would be the first 5 senses, right? We see this, we see this, we hear this, and we keep trading. One is quick, one is slow. Which one is the quick one? Smart one, clever one. That would be the 6th consciousness, right? Which one is the slow one? The slow one is the 8th. The 8th doesn't do much. It's kind of like the rice field, right? The rice field itself doesn't do very much. You plant seeds, you water it, and the sunshine, then the seeds grow by themselves. That's what the field is, right? One stays home and keep the books, so keeps the accounting going. That's the 7th. So the actions, the karmic actions of the first, the 5 brothers and the 6, right? The 6 work on the information, whatever product that the first 5 gathered, and then, do something with it, good or bad. And so the karma are created and sort of like gets sent to the 8th through the 7th. All right, another poem. This is a poem by Chan Master Changsha. In our Chinese Zen Masters class last year, we have studied at least a couple. I think we studied a couple koans or stories from this Master Changsha. Cultivators do not see what's real, mistaking consciousness for soul. This root of samsara, or constant rebirth, endless rebirth, this root of samsara all this time is to take the puppet as true self. So we are the cultivators. So we are studying the Dharma. We're trying to practice. We're trying to get enlightened. But yet we do not see what is real, because the real, the perfect nature is really hard to see. Mistaking consciousness for soul. So the soul refers to the self or soul or the true self. We think we don't understand the different consciousness working interdependently, creating this delusion. So we think, oh, there's a whole innate, independent, individual self that's there, always there. This root of samsara, this is the root of our rebirth. All this time, so since beginningless time, it's been there. It's been there. Don't ask where does it come from, because you don't have an answer. There's no answer for that. It's just there since endless time. Okay, nobody gave it to you. It's just there. So we take the puppet as true self. So the puppet refers to the ego self, to the false self. That is actually a puppet. All right, so another thing we want to say just briefly is the transformation of consciousness. So a main tenet of the Yogacara school is that the reason or the aim for our Buddhist practice, as seen by the Yogacara school, is to transform these 8 consciousness. So these 8 consciousness all are fundamentally deluded, right? And the first 7 come from the 8th. So the first 7 are actually a transformation of the 8th, kind of like the seed turns into the root, and the root give birth to the trunk and the branches and the leaves and the flowers, kind of like that. Okay, so we want to transform these eight consciousness into 4 types of wisdom. The first 5 the 5 sense consciousness, they becoming what is called accomplishing wisdom. And we'll explain that in a moment. The 6th consciousness, we transform that into the wisdom of sublime discernment. Discernment is something we will talk about today or next time. So discernment is the way we discriminate, we compare, we analyze, and then we understand a discernment. However, discernment can be wrongful discernment, could be correct discernment. So we discern correctly, that leads to wisdom. We see the dependent nature of everything. That will be good discernment, leading us closer to enlightenment. But if we discern wrong, for example, somebody criticizes you, you think he's an enemy. That is a discernment that is on the wrong track, and that will bring you more suffering, right? So 6th consciousness is the thing, is the one that creates this good or bad karma, wholesome karma. Before we learn Buddhism, we are used to creating some foolish, unwholesome karma, right? So when we practice, when we learn about the 100 Dharmas, when we learn about the Heart Sutra, when we learn the Diamond Sutra, we learn the wisdom of the Zen masters, we begin to acquire this right discernment, the right way to see and perceive this world. So sublime discernment, it goes very deep, it goes very profound. So slowly, our view, our perception of life becomes better and better and better. We become wiser and wiser. We understand the things happening around us better and better. So we gradually transform our 6th consciousness into a body of wisdom, characterized by good discernment and eventually sublime discernment. Okay, this is the key change. The change starts from here. And when we can do that, when we gather enough power and strength and depth and understanding, the right understanding, then we can change the manas into the wisdom of equality. The wisdom of equality. So right now, we don't really have equality, even though probably many of us will think that we like to behave in an equal way. We like to treat people equally, but fundamentally, we are not there yet. As long as the 7th consciousness still there, we're still holding on to the 8th as the self. As long as the self is not the false self is not destroyed, then we don't have true wisdom of equality. Yeah, so I will always be in the center to a crude degree or subtle degree, right? But when the false self is truly destroyed through wisdom of sublime discernment, we see our true nature, free from a permanent self. Then we see that all sentient beings, all human beings, men, woman, Asian, American, European, African, Middle Eastern, whatever, all sentient beings All human beings, all sentient beings are fundamentally equal. Right now, we can believe that, but we don't perceive that yet with a direct experience. So when the seventh destroys in Zen Buddhism, it's called enlightenment. It's called awakening. It's the awakening. It's 开悟. It's when we destroy the seventh, and that's when we truly see the equality of all beings, and that's when we have the wisdom of sublime discernment, or to be able to see the truth as it is. And when we have these two kinds of wisdom, from the sixth and the seventh, then we will be able to use our five senses to accomplish what we want to do, which is to liberate sentient beings. Right now, we use the five senses to give me pleasure. How do I cook something nice? Yeah. How do I earn money? What do I say to please the other person? We use the five senses to satisfy the ego. But when we have transformed the sixth and the seventh, then we'll be able to, selflessly use the five senses to accomplish the work of a bodhisattva. So if you think the Grandmaster Weijue, my Shifu, how he's able to, in 20 years, build such a great monastery, ordain 2,000 monks and nuns, and then, accumulate millions of followers and spread the teaching across Taiwan and beyond. How can you do that in 20 years? Because all his five senses are used for this one single purpose, accomplishing the work of a bodhisattva. And so eventually, when you have these three, or when these three wisdom become more mature or more expert, more refined, then the alaya consciousness, eventually the eighth, will become what's called a perfect mirror wisdom. So the perfect mirror wisdom is a metaphor. It means that our mind, remember the eight consciousnesses are the functions of the mind. Our mind will be able to mirror perfectly what reality is. In other words, we perceive ultimate truth, ultimate reality. Okay? So the work begins with sixth consciousness. When we meditate on the breath, when we meditate on the whole body, when we meditate on our feelings, when we meditate on compassion, that's what we're doing. We are directly or indirectly transforming the sixth consciousness to be able to have right discernment. Right discernment, that would be the right view or the right understanding. Right understanding is the first of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path. Okay? So we're connecting this older teachings now. Okay, so at this point, let us close our eyes for about 3 minutes and review in your mind what we know about this eight consciousness. Don't worry if you don't remember all of the characteristics, because there's a lot of stuff that we squeeze into the 2-3 classes. But whatever you remember, review it, make a note. And if you know you forgot something, you can always look at it later. So remember the five senses. Number 6, and the relationship between the seventh and the eighth. And what kind of wisdom do they turn into when we cultivate? The sixth is the key. It turns into what? And why? Why is the seventh turning into the wisdom of equality? What is preventing us from being truly equal now? Okay, let's open for a few minutes of questions. Do I have any questions so far? You can either write it in the chat room, or let's see if our host can open the the mute if you want to talk. Do you have any questions so far from the first hour? Okay, Vandana, can we unmute her? Go ahead.
Everyone is unmuted.
Jiahhu Shifu. I just was wondering about this eighth consciousness. You mentioned that it has all our karmic seeds, and that's how we are pulled towards a certain to take another birth. So, how does it determine which parents we are going to get? Like,
It's
how
the relationship. Okay, so how is it determined which parents you're going to get? It's the relationship with you and the sentient being. The sentient being. So if you have followed the five precepts more or less, then the parents are gonna be human beings. You're gonna be born as human beings, right? But if a person has created a lot of killing or stealing and so on, and um and so they violated the five precepts: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and so on. It's not like you violate any one of them, you're gonna go straight to hell. It's not like that, right? It depends on how serious the bad karma is. So enough bad karma is gonna push you into, say, the animal realm or the hungry ghost realm or the hell realm, right? So when you are pushed into the by your karma to the animal realm, then your parents gonna be animals, right? So I don't know if it's gonna be dogs or cats or pigs or mosquitoes, right? The animal realm is categorized by ignorance or foolishness. Foolishness. So what kind of karma creates that? One is when you drink a lot, you use a lot of uh, intoxicants to dumb yourself, make yourself really dumb. Two, you prevent others from getting knowledge. You teach others wrong, or you use some method to prevent others from gaining knowledge, gaining wisdom. Okay, for example, if somebody spread rumors about a great teacher, say somebody in the past have spread hideous rumors about my Shifu, and if a lot of people believe that person, those people would turn away from Buddhism or turn away from Shifu, and then probably their path to awakening or to more wisdom or to a better, to less suffering is shut off. So that will lead to ignorance or worse, possibly the animal realm or even worse. If a person cheat um, others a great amount of money. So, in the past way, these financial scandals, right? Some people is able to cheat people millions or even billions of dollars. Those people are going straight to hungry ghost, where they have lack resources and they're hungry all the time and they're starving and then they don't have anything to eat. They cannot eat anything and for who knows how long, right? But in the human realm, which people do you connect with? This is a really interesting question. Uh, it's gonna be usually it's gonna be people you already know in this life, all right? But it could also be from people you know in the past life that happened to ripen. So there was a story. There was a story in the one of the scriptures of a a person, a traveler, saw that a dead woman she was slaughtered. Uh, so her body was exposed on the side of the road. So he dug, so he buried her. He buried her. And then, uh, as a result, in the next life, the woman who died, the woman became his wife because of the kind act, the compassion that he had for that, unknown person. Okay. So, this gets really complicated. All right. Any other questions about the eight consciousness? Tammy? Tammy, good to see you. Okay, Tammy is my friend from graduate school. All right.
Sure. I have a question about the wisdoms. So thank you for explaining the wisdoms and mapping to the consciousness. So do the wisdoms occur sequentially, or different wisdoms could occur independently at different times?
That's a good question. They don't occur sequentially. They can occur at the same time. For example, the more we learn about the Buddhism and the equality of people or sentient beings, even though we haven't directly experienced that, right? We become more compassionate toward people we previously may have bias toward. So that wisdom of equality is developing. And the key starts with the wisdom of discernment. So the more we judge correctly and judge better in accordance to the ultimate reality, to the way things are, then other things will change. We'll begin to use our five senses in a better way, right? And we become more willing to do nonprofit work, to come to the monastery to help out, to help others. So we are already using our five senses to accomplish good deeds. So they do interact with each other, okay? And they also reinforce each other, okay? Anything else?
师父，阿弥陀佛，知法令。In terms
Okay.
using this approach, when we think of in terms of Zen and we do a 7-day retreat, or where we are instructed to by directly pointing a mind, and if there's like in the Zen sudden enlightenment breakthrough, that would be analogous to a sudden opening of seeing, as you mentioned, the seventh as a brief awareness that the seventh was not real.
Okay, so when we do a Zen 7 retreat, right? A 7-day Chan retreat, And when we say, oh, somebody achieve awakening, there could be a small awakening, it could be a critical awakening. A critical awakening is usually what we say in Chinese Buddhism as enlightenment. The enlightenment refers to two components. One, the realization of the seventh consciousness is wrong. The true realization of no self. And two, the pure knowing, the nature of the pure knowing, okay, which we haven't talked about in the Hundred Dharma class, right? But anything not at that level. So this is really significant. This is a critical point. Anything below that level, you could still have a sense of great joy or great insight. You can have many, many insights along the way, and some people may mistake that as enlightenment. So we need to be really careful. And that's why in many of these Zen stories, when a disciple achieves enlightenment, usually you need your enlightened master to verify for you, to test you. And sometimes they will test you once, twice, three times. Okay? Because it's not like a math problem. There's a definite answer there. Okay? Okay, let's continue with the second half. All right. So we do have a exercise number 2. We had set number 1 and number 2. So I encourage you to look at some of them or all of them and do whatever you can. Remember, there are 3 parts. There's the thinking, internalizing the teaching. And the second part is meditation practice. So how can you use this knowledge in your meditation? And 3 is daily application. So these are how you can apply this teaching in little tasks, common tasks during the day. Okay. All right. So now we have talked about or introduced the 8th consciousness. We have not exhausted everything about the 8th consciousness, right? But it's a good deep introduction. And we will understand more of the 8 kinds of consciousness through the second class, which is the 51 mental factors or the mind-associated dharmas. So these 51 mental states, mental factors, are individual specific mental states that are caught up by the different consciousness at different situations. The first group, and they are in 6 groups. The first group is 5 of such factors. They are called universally active mental factors. 五变形. So meaning that they are active all the time in every situation, in every mental experience. So right now you are listening to the talk. So these five are active. If you are dozing off, these 5 are active, right? So the 6 groups, the 51 are divided in 6 groups. 5 are universally active, 5 are specific. That means they are not universally active, but they are still pretty common in many, many situations. 11 wholesome dharmas and 26 unwholesome. Of the unwholesome dharmas, 6 are primary afflictions. They are the big bad guys. And 20 secondary afflictions. and 4 indeterminate states. Indeterminate means that they can be wholesome, they can be unwholesome, depending on how you use it. All right, so let's look at the first 5, and that's all the time we're gonna have today is attention, contact, feeling, conception, and volition. So because they are always active, almost always active, anytime any of the consciousness is active, they are there. They work with them. They work with all 8 consciousness. But first of all, some terminology, they're called the mind-associated Dharma because they arise from the mind Dharmas, meaning consciousness, the 8 consciousness. They depend on the same conditions as and are dominated by the respective consciousness. Okay? So that will become more clear as we continue. So I'm not going to spend time explaining that. Whereas the consciousness are general mental functions. So like vision, smelling, right, hearing, thinking, these are pretty general functions. The dharmas in this class are specific mental states or mental activities, mental factors that are associated with different consciousness and different situations. Studying the first class and the second class help us understand our complicated thinking and emotional process. Okay? So, they are called universal because, 1, they are each associated with all 8 kinds of consciousness. I already talked about that. They're actively wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral mental states. So some of the mental states are wholesome, some of the mental states are unwholesome, some are neutral, but they are there. They're there. So in other words, when we create good karma, wholesome karma, they are there. When we create unwholesome karma, they are there. When we are drawing a blank, when we're just wandering aimlessly, they are there. They are active in the past, present, and will continue to the future. So in the past, all the way into the past and past lives and whatever, they've always been there. And in the present, they're there. In the future, they will be there. They are all they're present in all sentient beings of the triple realm. So they are present in human beings, any human being. They are present in dogs and cats and pandas and mosquitoes and birds and fish. Now, not all the animals have all 51 mental states, okay? But they all have these 5. So they are in the realm of form. So celestial heavenly beings have these 5. Even realm of formlessness, human beings, sentient beings who have no form, no body, just mental, they just mentally existing, they have these 5 factors. So in humans and non-humans. Okay, first of all, attention. Attention is what you think it is. It's attention. Attention has, so first I may give you a text from a sort of like a textbook of the Yogacara in Chinese called 成为世论. It is written by Xuanzang, Master Xuanzang, who founded the school and translated this and most of the classic Yogacara texts into Chinese. So he compiled this book called 成为世论. um, Demonstration of Consciousness Only. Okay, that's the name of the book. It's been translated into English. So in the footnote, there's that title. So I may quote a text from the English translation of that text. And that may sound kind of academic, but it's all right. Attention has as its nature, the nature of attention is arousing of mind, meaning arousing of certain type of consciousness. And its activity is that of directing mind to the objective realm, meaning, when the consciousness, they perceive, right? What do they perceive? It arouses and awakens the seeds of the mind that will come into existence and lead this mind and make it approach its object, hence the name attention. So in plain English, attention alerts the consciousness, let's say the five senses or the six, directs it to focus on a particular object of interest. This is also called awakens the seeds of the mind, referring to the karma seeds. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say you really, really like chocolate. So when you're just walking about on the street, and then there's a chocolate store with all kinds of chocolate on display on the window. So immediately your vision, your eye consciousness is drawn to that window. For somebody who is not interested in chocolate can just walk right past and doesn't even notice that there's a chocolate store there. Yeah? So the attention is active in the eye consciousness. Even before your brain thinks about it. When I say your brain, I mean the sixth consciousness. I'm not saying the sixth consciousness is the brain. It's just a common English phrase, okay? So the attention is in the eye consciousness, but it's also in the sixth consciousness, right? So your eye are drawn to things you like to see, you are interested in. Somebody who loves dogs can notice dogs faster than other people. Somebody who likes clothing can notice clothing. The clothes that people wear as they walk on the street. Somebody who is not interested in fashion can walk past and run into many people and doesn't notice their clothing at all. So the attention in their eye consciousness is not there. It's not interested. So the attention draws interest. The interest, of course, is conditioned by your past behavior. All right, so then in this case, when somebody who loves chocolate, their eyes are drawn to the chocolate store, and then immediately sixth consciousness arise and work on it. Oh, that looks really good. It looks, the shape is beautiful. I wonder what's the flavor, and you start working on that. So in this case, in the next moment, the sixth consciousness attention is entirely focused on the different chocolate, and to the point that the person may ignore his or her friend that's walking with him, right? So that's what attention is. Now, attention can work in the previous example when your senses draws your sixth consciousness to something that you like already. Or attention could work in this way. Where's my phone? You don't remember your phone, so you start scanning your room looking for your phone. So your attention is on alert, right? Your attention is on alert, and then finally you locate the phone. That's how it can work too. All right, so the Great Learning, 大学, is a classic Confucian text. It's not a Buddhist text, but it says something relevant. When the mind pays no attention, one looks without seeing, hears without perceiving, and eats without knowing the taste. So, does that sound like us in our everyday life a lot of time? We see without see, we look without seeing, we hear without listening, without perceiving the content, we eat without knowing the flavor, the taste, because our attention wasn't there. So now you know attention is important in mindfulness, right? When your mind runs away, when you're supposed to be focused on your breath in your meditation, and your sixth consciousness go around to all over the travel around the world, you need that attention to draw your sixth consciousness back to the focus. So attention alerts the mind and makes the mind perceive its objects. Without attention, even objects in front of our eyes, even something is in front of you, you don't see it. You have no mental register. Yeah, there's no conscious perception of it. All right, so that's attention. Contact or mental contact. We're talking about mental contact here. The nature of this Dharma or this mental factor is to bring together a mind, meaning consciousness, mind factors, meaning the other mind-associated dharmas. We'll give an example. And the object is, for example, form, sound. So in the previous example of locating the chocolate through the window, in the eye consciousness, the attention locates something that looks like chocolate, right? And so the eye turns, so you'll be walking and there'll be a lot of information in front of you, right? Your vision, in your field of vision, there's a lot of things going on. So there's that chocolate store window, but there are people and there are other stores selling clothing or selling cars or whatever, and there's traffic. But then the attention in your eye draws to that chocolate. So then the next moment, there's contact. Your eye, that's your first consciousness, is in contact with the form being the chocolate boxes, the chocolate on display. So there's contact brought together by your attention. Its action is to serve as support for the arising of feeling, conception, conceptualization, volition, and so on. So what happens next is the feeling, the conception or idea, and action, volition, mental action. So that follows, right? These are the next three in the universal mental factors. So your eye makes contact with the chocolate. And the next moment, your sixth consciousness. Also, in the sixth consciousness, the tension in the sixth consciousness makes contact, brings together the contact of your sixth consciousness with the idea of chocolate. The form and the idea of chocolate. All right, so this in the sixth consciousness is the contact with the idea, the perception of chocolate. And then what happens next? Feelings, thoughts, action. So here's an example. A chair comes into our line of sight. This mental factor unifies the eyes, table, and eye consciousness. So in other words, you see a chair. This very simple action, you see a chair. Your eyes and the chair, the form, and your eye consciousness, the three are in contact. And then, of course, it takes the sixth consciousness to know that this is a chair you can sit on. Some say that contact comes before attention. Some say attention comes before contact. There's arguments. But then, since they are both universally active, I don't think it's an important point to debate. All right, so the third of the universal is feeling. Now, this is crucial. This is very important. Of the 51 mental factors, this is one of the most important of feelings and emotions. Okay, so of course, this is a general term. It covers any specific feeling and emotions. So under this umbrella called feeling, mental factor, there are many, many different types of feelings. Feeling has as its nature the experience of objects that are agreeable, disagreeable, or neither. So what we usually say is feelings can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Right? And its activity is that of arousing craving because it creates a desire for union, separation, or neither one. What that means is that when you see the chocolate, for somebody who likes it, the feeling is pleasant. Oh, it's a warm feeling. Yeah, you feel really good about it, even though it could be very kind of subtle. And then it arouses craving. Craving is a form of desire, a strong desire that's in the next group. In the next group, the specific mental factors. So we talk about desire next, in the next group. But they may not arouse desires. With somebody, so let's say this person who loves chocolate has a friend who is trying to quit chocolate, who's just sick of chocolate. So the first guy says, "Oh, let's go in there and buy some chocolate." And his friend says, "No, I don't want to go in there." Right? So the feeling is different. It's kind of unpleasant. So arousing craving, this is a craving to get away. The desire to get away from chocolate store. So it creates desire for union. I want more. Separation. I want to get away. Or a third friend walking to the has no feeling about chocolate, so it doesn't matter either way. He can go in there and then walk out empty-handed. It doesn't bother him. All right. So feeling is one of the five skandhas, five aggregates, 五蕴, form, feeling, conception, volition, consciousness. So we studied this in the Heart Sutra already, right? Form, body, feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. Notice 3 of the 5 skandhas appear in these 5 universals. So feeling is really important. Conception, the next one, is really important. Forming an impression, a way you perceive some object, some event. Okay, so feeling, conception, they are picked out from the 51 mental factors as part of the 5 skandhas because not everybody will study the 51 mental factors, like we are doing now. Yeah, and you don't necessarily need to, although it's good knowledge. So if you don't study the 51 or 100 dharmas, at least you need to know about the form, feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. At least you need to understand this. That's how important feelings are. Feelings are primarily of 3 kinds: agreeable or pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. From agreeable feelings come desire and craving. From disagreeable, unpleasant feelings come anger and resentment. So this desire and craving anger, resentment, these are the primary kinds of unwholesome dharmas. Unwholesome dharmas. Okay? They are the root of our bad karma. So that's why feelings are important. Neutral feelings, on the other hand, leads to ignorance or unmindfulness or drowsiness, laziness. So any type of feeling can be quite important. So feelings are very influential in the creation of karma. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one, conception. Conception. Or conceptualization. Some translators use perception. I think conception is a better term. The nature of conceptualization is that of grasping images of objects, and its activity is that of displaying and producing various names and forms. When distinct characteristics like green, red, blue, round, square, long, short, are established, then various names and words are produced accordingly. So in this description, conception is what gives our objects and experiences names and labels. When we label them, we usually attach a type of feeling with it. Okay? We usually attach a type of feeling with it. So this conception and feeling together, they are primarily responsible for how we view our life, how we view things, and how we view people. And when we change our conception, our feelings can change too. That's how we cultivate and transform the consciousness into wisdom. So in Chinese, 色受想行识, 想 is composed of two parts. That's the genius of Chinese characters. You know, if you learn Chinese language, it's so interesting. It's a treasure. So the word for conception is 相 or image or form on top of 心 or mind. That is image in your mind. See, when you think of chocolate, your conception, your idea of chocolate is not the objective chocolate, right? It is actually what you think of it. The idea, the label, the imagery you have formed inside your mind of it. So that's why the first person, when they perceive chocolate, they have a warm feeling. The second person, chocolate, disgust. You make me fat. I want to get away from you, right? Third person, no feeling. It's because their perception, their conception of chocolate is different. So people form different conceptions, ideas of different things. And there's no absolute right or wrong in that. So what is chocolate? Chocolate is cocoa, right? Cocoa butter, if it's good chocolate, or fake synthesized oil, if it's not good chocolate. There's sugar, usually sugar, unless it's 100% dark, right? So sugar, some form of sugar. So it's cocoa, oil and sugar. That's what it is. When you dissect it, it's not so attractive because cocoa powder by itself is bitter. It's bitter. Yeah. You ever try to eat 100% dark chocolate? Just cocoa mass. It's not very tasty. Nobody eat that for fun. Okay. Nobody eat that for pleasure. Okay. So that's kind of the objective component of chocolate. But in your mind, your concept of chocolate is quite different. That's why we say the sixth consciousness paints coats of color onto what we perceive. So you find, for example, Chinese people usually marry Chinese people, but there are a lot of exceptions, and so on. Why? Because they find Chinese people more attractive out of habit. So basic concepts the mind creates are directly related to the perception of the objects like colors, red, green. So red, green, and blue are what we name these certain frequencies of light, right? But in Chinese, there's a very mysterious color called qing, and nobody can say that qing is green or blue or something in between. It's qing, and sometimes it can be black. So qing in Chinese is a color, but it's a very strange color. It's a very common color, but then it's used in all kinds of different ways. Could be black, could be green, could be blue, or some shade in between. So different culture produce different concepts of color. There's not like a one-to-one mapping. Shapes like round and square and so on. Objects like rock, table, houses, and so on. We then create comparative concepts such as long and short and hard and soft. See, when we say long and short, we are already leaving the five senses behind. This is a sixth consciousness construction. And it's relative, not absolute. We then further create concepts of beauty, ugliness, good, bad, desirable, undesirable, and so on. So these concepts, the layers of concepts, is more and more complicated. So these different concepts will lead to volition, which is the next one. Volition. Volition or will, sometimes it's translated will, is the mental factor that causes the mind to act. And it's this action that lead to karma. Okay, so feeling and conception usually can lead to volition or creation of karma. Together, they also can lead to creation of karma by causing volition. That's the act. So that's why these three. So we are constantly creating karma, large and small, because the five universals are present in every single mental experience or every single experience in life. But a lot of times the karma we create are very minuscule, not very influential, neutral karma. You come in and sit on the chair, you stand up and leave, you open the fridge, you close it, yeah, you flip through the channels. They are very, not that influential karma. Unless, you go through TikTok for 2 hours, 3 hours, then the karma becomes a little more significant. Okay, we need to realize that concepts of objects in our mind are not the same as the object itself. This is what's important about conception. When we look at this world, everything becomes a concept in our mind. Everything is a conception, is the form inside our mind, the form inside our mind. We interpret it and store it in our memory. So the world that we perceive to be real are actually only concepts built up in our mind. So the question is, do you actually know a rock? Do you actually know the diamond ring? Do you actually know what it is? Or when you see a diamond ring, it's what you think of it. It's what your mind makes of it, right? That's why advertising is so powerful. So decades ago, somebody came up with this great advertisement line, great slogan, "Diamonds are forever," and created this cultural phenomena that when you love somebody, you need to give that person a diamond ring. You need to exchange diamond rings. That's a cultural thing created by a diamond company. It's not real. It's a concept. More abstract concepts further away from direct perception objects, such as time, space, conformity, differences, and so on, are discussed in the fourth class, the class of mind-dissociated dharmas. Okay? Those are very interesting group of things again. All right, number 5. Volition is a kind of complicated one. Oh no, I only have 2 minutes. I was going to do some interaction, but okay, I cannot talk about volition in 2 minutes, so I'm gonna have to quit. But you can look at a note, okay? There are a couple questions from our WhatsApp group. I'm glad that some conversation is taking place. So let's try to quickly answer some of them. There's a question about faith being a wholesome mental factor in the next group, in the third group. So why is faith a wholesome mental factor? Because the faith we're referring to is the faith we talk about in Buddhism is not blind faith, right? It's not blind faith. So you need faith to keep you going. Scientists talk about evidence, but they also have faith. They have faith in science. Yeah, so the faith is important in any accomplishment, any endeavor. So it's in this sense that we talk about faith as a wholesome factor. All right, but it is important to realize, and so we talked about this before. You just because Buddha says something or anybody says something doesn't mean you should have faith. You should develop that faith, say in Buddha's words, by examining yourself, using your discernment, using your right discernment. Verify for yourself what you can verify. Okay, observe for yourself. When it makes sense to you, then you should have faith in the other things, in more things that the Buddha teaches. How does one experience faith in the present moment? That's a very good question. How does one experience faith in the present moment? So faith is one of the mental factors. Yeah. So when you are meditating, Why do you meditate? Because you believe it can do something good for you, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually. That's faith. So when you meditate, you say, okay, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do this every day, at least for 15 minutes, maybe even an hour. There's underlying faith that this will be good for you. This is something you need. So that's faith, even though you don't consciously think about it. When you're cooking, say you're cooking your next meal, there's faith that you're gonna make something edible, right? Hopefully. So faith is also quite prevalent. All right, here's another question. Alaya, or the eighth consciousness, pertaining to alaya, vijnana, or the eighth consciousness, do the experiences that reside in our storehouse consciousness also contain our false views and illusions? Or are they somehow cleansed before they wind up there? If it would be represented by a physical place, would it seem like neat or tidy, or is it like unsightly hoarder's home? This is a very interesting question. Wouldn't it be nice if there's an automatic filter to filter out the unwholesome seeds, right? Unfortunately, there isn't. So your seventh consciousness is not very discriminating, and you sense everything through the ego self to the eighth. So whether it's true or not true. So there's a lot of falsely perceived experiences in your mind, in your eighth, in your consciousness. That is why when you see somebody you don't like, you tend to focus on that person's negative parts to reinforce your perception and conception of that person. That's because of the karma seeds in the alaya. You already had those bias seeds. But at some point, we realize, oh, actually, I was too harsh, or actually, I didn't see the whole picture. And you begin to change. You begin to use the right discernment to change your perception of that person. Then you begin to feed different seeds into your storehouse. All right. And at some point, these different seeds will fight with each other, for attention. And so the old seeds may still come up and say, okay, I still don't like you, but then I'm willing to try to listen to what you say. That's the old seeds and the new seeds, competing. But hopefully through cultivation, through Buddhist practice, you begin to see that nobody is resentable. Everybody have their own karma and conditions, and there's a way to um, hopefully help that person overcome their shortcomings or attachments. So when you look at a person this way, the feeling is neutral. You don't cling to that person, you don't hate that person, but it's a neutral feeling of just simply wanting to help that person. Okay? So no, the alaya is not self-cleansing. It has no power to cleanse itself. The power comes from your sixth and the seventh. Okay, here's another good question. Will be the last question. If we have eight consciousness, then where is the knowing consciousness? Is it present in all of them? This is a very insightful question. So Sifu didn't talk about the knowing, because knowing is not the consciousness. The consciousness is the part of the mind that discerns or discriminates. Okay, even though the eighth is very low level discriminating, but still does that. The seventh discriminates or discerns, thinks of the eighth as the self. There's a consideration there. The sixth is, the massive discrimination or judging, comparison, and so on. The first five does lower level judgment as well. Some vision will make your eyes feel good, and some will make it feel bad. Similar with sound, will make your ears hurt. It will make your ears feel smooth, right? And comfortable. But the knowing itself is not involved in any feeling, pleasant or unpleasant. You know that you are hungry, you know that you are full, but there's no feeling about being hungry or being full. So the knowing is what? What is the knowing? The knowing is, you can say, it's the perceptive component of all the consciousness before it goes into the judgment, the perceptive part. That's one way to explain it. Okay? Basically, when we talk about knowing and consciousness, we're coming from a different system. We're coming from the Zen system. We're coming from the Tathagata Garbha system. We're coming from uh, the Buddha nature system. It's a different system from the Yogacara. So Yogacara doesn't talk about the Buddha nature so much. But they're not, it's not, there's no paradox here. Okay. Finally, good desire. Yes, of course, they are good desires. So it's a frequent misunderstanding that desires are always bad. No, they are good desires. Desire for enlightenment is crucial. You must want enlightenment in order to continue on your awakening path, right? All right, so that's what we do today. Next week, we'll continue with the last of the five universals and then look at the next group, the five specifics. Now, the five universals and the five specifics together, they make things very interesting. They make things very interesting and they go a long way to help us understand how our mind works. All right, so we'll continue that next week. Unfortunately, I didn't give you much time for interaction today. We'll do more of that next class. All right. And we have started. Oh, I should do this. Okay, so this is our website, Prajna Dharma. This is our website. Where's the sign up for the? Oh yeah, here. We have the phone free hours or internet free or screen free hours as an activity that we encourage you to participate, and that means that every day for these 2 months while the class is going, pick a time period, morning after you get up or evening before you go to sleep. For 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour, you can choose where you are gonna get away from the computer, your phone, and internet. All right. So this will just promote health and a better sleep. And also, we need time to get away to do meditation or to regurgitate what we have learned, right? So get away from the digital aspects. So sign up to participate in this activity. It's voluntary, of course, and nobody's gonna check on you every day. But at the end of February, when the class is coming to a close, we're gonna gather some feedback from you. How does have influenced your life? Okay, so that's one thing. And the other is Q&A. So we build this website, this web page, where you can send in your question this way too. So you can interact on WhatsApp, our 100 Dharma group, or you can send in your question here on the web page. You can put in your name. The names are optional, and question type 100 Dharma if it's related to this class or some general Buddhist question. So this you have to fill in and then put in your question. Okay, so you don't have to sign up for anything, but you can optionally put in your name or Dharma name and send in questions. So this is another source, and Shifu will collect together. Our TA will collect together these questions, and hopefully each class I will answer some of these questions. All right. Okay, so that's the announcement. Let us conclude the class with the dedication. So let's pause for a moment and make your own dedication of merits from the merits of studying the Dharma today. May the merits of our studying the Dharma together be dedicated to our own enlightenment and the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May the merits also be dedicated to peace everywhere in the world. May everyone have good health and bad karma eradicated. Okay, we'll see you either this Sunday in our awakening hour at 6 a.m. California time, or we'll see you next week in class. Okay, take care.
Palms together. We thank Jiahhu Shifu with 3 half bows.
1 half bow to the Buddha.
阿弥陀佛。
Okay, see you all next time.